There's a version of you that's still living rent-free in your mind. You know the one. The version that plays it safe, that stalls in the name of thinking, that keeps tabs on how others perceive them more than how aligned they feel. That version, it's outdated, it's expired, but you're still dragging it into every opportunity, every conversation, every morning routine, as if it deserves a say in the future you're trying to build. It doesn't. It had its time. And it's holding you back in ways that are too quiet to notice until they become too loud to ignore. We outgrow shoes, we outgrow relationships, we even outgrow old playlists. But no one teaches us how to outgrow a version of ourselves, the one built in survival mode, the one shaped by rejection, fear, or comfort. That version was never meant to walk with you forever. It was only built to help you survive a chapter. And that chapter is over. Yet here you are, clinging to it like it's a safety net, forgetting it's also a cage. You weren't born cautious. You became cautious. You weren't born insecure. That was conditioned into you. Every hesitation, every excuse you whisper to yourself before taking a step forward, that's the old you whispering from behind the curtain. The problem is you've mistaken that voice for wisdom, when really it's just leftover fear wearing a new outfit. The truth is brutal. Growth doesn't come wrapped in comfort. Growth requires force. It requires you to intentionally break your own patterns. It demands a kind of self-confrontation that most people avoid their entire lives, not because they're lazy, but because it hurts. It hurts to look at yourself and say, this isn't working. I am the reason I haven't leveled up. But that hurt, that's the beginning. That's the cut before the healing, the burn before the breakthrough. There's a reason you keep falling back into the same behaviors, not because you're weak, but because the old you is deeply rehearsed. It knows all the scripts. It knows exactly how to seduce you into stalling. You've been working hard, it says, right? You deserve to rest a little longer, but that version of you only knows rest. It doesn't know expansion. It doesn't understand what's possible. It was never built for the world you're stepping into. The discomfort you're feeling right now, the internal tension, the emotional friction, that's not a sign you're failing. That's the heat of evolution. That's what it feels like when your future self is trying to burn through your past limitations. It's supposed to feel unfamiliar. It's supposed to hurt a little. That's the signal that the old skin is peeling off. You've seen flashes of your next level self in moments of deep focus, in the days you surprised yourself with your own discipline, in the way you feel when you're in momentum, when the excuses fall silent and your decisions grow teeth. That version, that's the one knocking. That's the one trying to get through. But it can't live in the same space as the old you. One of them has to go, and only you get to decide who stays. You don't need more affirmations. You need confrontation. You need to look the old you in the eye and say, I'm done letting you lead. That means killing old habits, not gently setting them down, not negotiating with them, killing them. The way you check your phone first thing in the morning, the way you say maybe tomorrow and mean probably never, the way you shrink your ambitions so they don't offend anyone else's comfort. Every time you do that, you're resurrecting the old you. You're breathing life into a ghost, and you wonder why you're exhausted. You're not tired because you're doing too much. You're tired because you're dragging dead weight. You're trying to walk into a new season with a mindset built for survival, not success. And that's why everything feels like friction. Because it is. You're trying to upgrade your external world without updating your internal operating system. Let's stop pretending this is about motivation. It's not. This is about identity. Who do you choose to be when no one's watching? When there's no applause? When the reward is delayed? That's who you really are. And if that identity is rooted in hesitation, avoidance, or performance, you've got work to do. Not someday, now. Because time isn't waiting for you to be ready, it's just moving. And the longer you wait, the louder the old you becomes. Here's the truth you've been avoiding. You will never feel ready to outgrow yourself, because the self you're trying to escape is also the one that taught you how to cope. But coping isn't living. Coping is what we do when we've given up on breakthrough. You were not built to cope your way through life. You were built to evolve. And evolution doesn't wait for permission. This isn't about becoming your best self. That's too vague, too polished. This is about breaking the version of you that's pretending to be enough, the one that says, this is just how I am. No, that's how you were, and that's not good enough anymore. Not for where you're going, not for who you're becoming. You've played small so long it feels like home. But it's not. It's a coffin for your potential. And the longer you stay there, the more convincing it becomes. You want change? Then force it. Rip your habits open, strip your routines down to the bone, rebuild from discipline, not desire, because desire fades, but discipline builds legacy. Stop waiting for a sign. You are the sign. Now burn the blueprint of who you used to be before it buries the future you still have time to become. You don't see it yet, but staying the same is more painful than change could ever be. You just got good at numbing it. The truth is, every day you delay your evolution, something silently dies. Your confidence, your hunger, your spark, not with a bang, but with a quiet fading you barely notice until it's almost gone. Then one day you look in the mirror and ask, when did I stop moving? But the better question is, when did you start settling? Comfort is a slow killer. It doesn't announce itself like failure does. It whispers softly like a lullaby, telling you you've done enough, that you're fine where you are, that others have it worse. And in that moment, you're no longer growing, you're decaying. The cost of staying the same is invisible at first because nothing seems broken. Your bills are paid, your phone still lights up, your routine feels predictable, but comfort isn't peace, it's just the absence of challenge. And without challenge, there is no change. You see, growth isn't a reward, it's a demand. The universe doesn't hand it out to those who wish for it. It gives it to those who force it through action, through decision, through discipline, so sharp it cuts through the noise. But most people don't want that level of ownership, because once you admit that you're the one holding the pen, you can't blame anyone else for the story you're stuck in. So what's really stopping you? It's not fear of failure, that's a lie. It's fear of responsibility, because once you rise, you have to keep rising. Once you outgrow your old self, you can't crawl back into it without shame. You can't unsee your potential, and that terrifies you more than falling ever did, because now the only excuse left is effort, and that one's too personal to dodge. Your old self, it's not just habits. It's your entire worldview. It's the part of you that gets defensive when challenged, that chooses validation over growth, that flinches at hard truths and clings to soft lies. That version of you is emotionally expensive to maintain. It needs constant reassurance, constant distraction, constant delay, and it will cost you every breakthrough you were meant to have. Let's be blunt. If you don't kill the current version of you, the world will do it for you. It'll hand you consequences instead of corrections, regret instead of reminders, because evolution isn't optional. It's just easier to control when it's self-inflicted. Otherwise, life will force the change through loss, humiliation, or crisis. And by then, it won't feel like growth. It'll feel like collapse. So what are you really afraid of? Being uncomfortable, being judged, being misunderstood? Good. Those are the entry fees. You can't evolve in public and expect applause. Evolution looks like isolation. It looks like rewriting your schedule when everyone else is partying. It looks like building new thoughts in a room full of people who still think like the old you. It looks like making decisions that offend your past self. And that's the price. Growth demands betrayal, not of your values, but of your patterns. You keep looking for motivation when what you need is a standard, something non-negotiable, something sacred, something that says, I don't care how I feel, I care what I've decided, because your future won't wait for a better mood. It responds to movement, not moods. That's the power you keep giving away to convenience, to comfort, to the false peace of playing small. And all the while, your potential is pacing back and forth behind a door you refuse to open. You don't need a plan. You need a threshold, a moment where you say, I refuse to carry this version of me into one more conversation, one more opportunity, one more day. That's the real transformation, not when the outside changes, but when you revoke the old identity's license to operate your life. And that doesn't happen gradually. It happens in an instant, a decision, a new level of disgust with stagnation. And here's what they won't tell you. There's grief in growth. You will miss the version of you that used to get away with less, the one that could hide behind excuses, the one that didn't know better. But that grief, that's sacred. That's the funeral before the rebirth. That's the proof you're finally taking yourself seriously. You don't evolve by adding more. You evolve by subtracting what no longer fits. And sometimes what no longer fits is 90% of your current life. Let it go. Let go of the morning routine that feeds your laziness. Let go of the relationships that applaud your mediocrity. Let go of the need to explain your evolution to people who profit from your stagnation. Let go of the fear that doing better means becoming someone you're not. You're not becoming someone else. You're becoming more you than you've ever allowed. And that's what scares people. That's why they'll call you arrogant, obsessive, cold. But what they're really saying is, I miss the version of you that made me feel comfortable with doing nothing. And guess what? That version doesn't owe them anything. Not your presence, not your agreement, not your loyalty to the old script. You are not a comfort zone for others. You are a catalyst for yourself first. So burn the idea that change has to be gentle, that healing has to be poetic, that transformation has to be soft. Sometimes it's violent. Sometimes it's a demolition before it's a design. Sometimes it looks like walking away from everything that once defined you. Not because it was wrong, but because it's no longer enough. And your life, it only expands when your standards do. Here's what no one will admit. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the loudest. It's the one who has outgrown their own excuses. The one who used to fold and now stands firm. The one who looks their old identity in the face and says, "You're fired." That's your job now. Fire your limitations. Fire your distractions. Fire the softness that's sabotaging your future. And when people ask what changed, you don't need to explain. You just smile and say, I finally stopped negotiating with who I used to be. Because the moment you do that, life stops being random and starts becoming a reflection of who you chose to become when no one was watching. There was a time when you moved differently. Not smarter, not stronger, just hungrier. Before you learned how to blend in, before you made peace with mediocrity. You didn't have all the answers back then, but you had something else, urgency. The kind that made you chase things before you had permission. The kind that burned through comfort like it was fuel. But somewhere along the way, you traded that fire for familiarity, for polite routines, for being realistic. And now you've convinced yourself that the fire's gone. But it's not. It's buried. Under self-doubt, under habits you pretend are personality, under years of being told to calm down, slow down, stay safe. But the fire, it's still there. It never left. It's just waiting for you to stop pretending you don't need it. You weren't made to function. You were made to ignite. And right now, you are the one standing between the spark and the flame. Not life, not your past, not the people who underestimated you. You. Because somewhere deep down, you started believing that outgrowing yourself meant losing your identity. But what if it's the opposite? What if shedding who you were is the only way to finally become who you actually are? People love the idea of evolution, but not the process. Because real growth feels like violence. You don't just shift one habit, you tear through your entire mindset. You uproot routines that were stitched into your mornings. You challenge beliefs that were inherited, not chosen. You say goodbye to a version of you that kept you alive and still choose to move forward knowing it might hurt. And yes, it will hurt. You'll miss the comfort of autopilot. You'll miss the false confidence that came from always knowing what comes next. But that's not power, that's predictability. And if you want to change your life, you have to leave the script behind. You have to become the kind of person who walks into uncertainty like it's a test they were born to pass. Not because they know how, but because they're done pretending they don't have to. This is the moment most people quit, right when the old you starts screaming, this isn't safe, right when the changes you're making begin to feel like betrayal, but you're not betraying your past self, you're liberating your future one. Because let's be honest, how much longer were you planning to keep performing a version of yourself that doesn't even inspire you? You keep waiting for signs, but you forget you are the sign. The moment you decide to move differently, speak differently, wake up differently, that's when everything shifts. Not because the world suddenly starts working in your favor, but because you finally stopped working against yourself. That shift won't be loud. It'll be quiet. It'll be a 4 o'clock a.m. alarm, a skipped party, a book instead of a scroll, a no that feels terrifying but necessary, a routine so boring it builds a discipline so rare it becomes a superpower. And suddenly you'll realize the fire never needed to roar. It just needed to be consistent. Consistency. That's the real threat to your old self. Not energy, not ambition, but the quiet, unshakable decision to show up, even when you're tired, even when you're unseen, even when no one claps. That's the killer of old identities. Not declarations, not speeches, discipline. Because every time you act in alignment with your future self, you weaken your past. Every decision becomes a vote. Every choice is a chisel, carving away what no longer belongs. And you know what you'll find underneath all that noise? A version of you that's unstoppable. But here's the hard part. They won't recognize you. The people who knew you before will say you've changed, that you've lost your edge, that you're acting different. And they'll be right, because the new you doesn't beg for attention, doesn't perform for approval, doesn't waste time explaining transformation to those who've chosen stagnation. The new you is louder, just sharper, more precise, less available to anything that doesn't align. This is the season of subtraction. Remove the habits that numb you, the conversations that shrink you, the timelines that guilt you. You are not running late. You are rising on time for the version of yourself that's been waiting behind all that hesitation. And the faster you subtract, the faster you rise. But you must stay sharp, because the old you is clever. It knows your patterns. It knows how to disguise itself as self-care when it's really just avoidance. It knows how to use nostalgia as a leash. Don't fall for it. Romanticizing who you were is the fastest way to betray who you could be. Stop calling it growth when it's really just maintenance. Stop calling it balance when it's actually fear in disguise. You're not here to stay the same. You're here to expand. That means creating habits that offend the past version of you. That means walking into rooms you feel underqualified for and deciding you belong anyway. That means doing what needs to be done before you feel ready. Because readiness is a lie. It's a product of repetition, not preparation. You'll never be ready to let go of the old you, but you can choose to do it anyway. Because the price of not evolving isn't just mediocrity, it's emotional bankruptcy. You'll start to feel it in the form of quiet resentment. You'll resent your own reflection. You'll resent the people who pass you by. You'll resent the opportunities you didn't take because you were still negotiating with comfort. And that resentment, it won't come with warning signs. It'll build slowly until one day you wake up and realize you've been living the same year for a decade and calling it a life. No more. This is the pivot. The chapter where you burn the mask, where you choose friction over familiarity, where you trade being light for being legendary. The fire's still in you, but you have to feed it, not with fantasy, with action. Small, ruthless, relentless action. That's the real flex. Not talking about what you'll become, but becoming it when no one's watching. Without applause, without clarity, without certainty, just you and the unshakable belief that the next version of you is already built. It's just waiting for you to let go of the one holding the door shut. You've made it this far, and that matters. Not because it's the end, but because it proves you can move, that you can walk away from the familiar, that you can grieve an older version of yourself while still refusing to go back to it. This isn't about change anymore. This is about ownership of your identity, of your story, of your future. There's a moment right between who you were and who you're becoming where the world gets quiet, the distractions fade, the noise dies down, and you're left alone with one question: now what? And here's the answer. Now you keep going, even when it's not dramatic, even when no one's clapping, even when the high of transformation wears off and you're left with nothing but routine and resolve. That's when the real evolution begins. Because the new you isn't born out of one powerful decision. It's shaped through hundreds of invisible ones. The ones no one sees, the ones no one validates, the ones that feel boring, heavy, thankless. But those are the decisions that build character. Not the kind that gets quoted online, the kind that rewires how you carry yourself when no one's watching. And let's be honest, most people stop here. They start strong, they burn bright for a few weeks, then they slip, they go back, they tell themselves, I'll start over later, but you're not most people, not anymore, because most people don't finish what they start. They chase sparks and call it fire, but you've learned to stoke the flames, you've learned to turn the chaos into a rhythm, you've stopped needing rescue. That's when everything changes, when you stop waiting to be saved, when you stop outsourcing your transformation to some future version of yourself who magically has more time, more confidence, more resources. That person doesn't exist. They're a myth, a projection. The real you is here now. And the question is, what will you do with this version of yourself right now in this moment? Because life doesn't care how long you've been stuck. It only responds when you move, when you disrupt your own pattern, when you force a new behavior into an old cycle. That's when momentum kicks in, not with motivation, but with movement. And that movement builds the one thing your old self never had: proof. Proof that you don't need to feel ready. Proof that you can function without applause. Proof that discomfort won't kill you, it'll reveal you. That's what separates the people who dream from the people who build. One waits for alignment, the other creates it. And it's not that you never fall back, you will. You'll relapse into old thoughts, you'll flirt with old habits, you'll forget who you're becoming, but now you'll know the truth. You'll know that slipping doesn't mean stopping, it just means realigning, getting back into motion, reminding yourself that perfection was never the goal, progress was. Here's the secret no one wants to admit. Outgrowing your old self doesn't make life easier. It makes you stronger, because what you used to call pressure, you now call preparation. What used to break you now sharpens you, and what used to scare you, it bores you. You've outgrown not just your old identity, but your old fears. They can't reach you here. You've become the kind of person who leaves no other option but growth. The kind of person whose actions embarrass their old excuses. The kind of person who doesn't announce they've changed, but makes it undeniable through how they show up. And no, it won't always feel powerful. Some days it'll feel lonely, others it'll feel ordinary, but the extraordinary is built through the ordinary, stacked brick by brick, day by day. And while everyone else is still waiting for a breakthrough, you're becoming one. So now you know. You don't need permission, you don't need clarity, you don't need a sign, you need consistency, you need non-negotiables, you need a self-image that refuses to live on clearance, and you got that now. The old version of you had its place, it protected you, it adapted, it survived, but you're done surviving, you're building, and builders don't look back, they level up over and over, without apology, without explanation. So if you ever doubt this path, if you ever feel the pull to regress, just remember this: the most dangerous version of you isn't the one who changed once, it's the one who keeps changing, who evolves by force if necessary, who understands that growth isn't a phase, it's a lifestyle. You are no longer becoming, you are. And the old you, that version doesn't get to speak here anymore.